Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our February 5th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. And we will begin our meeting this evening with an invocation. And I would ask that if you desire to bow with me. Gracious Lord, as we assemble once again to conduct the business of our county, we acknowledge your omnipotence. Help us to realize this is not a challenge to our authority, but the source of our strength, that through you we can do all things pleasing to thee. We pray first for wisdom. Arm us with common sense, good judgment, and a prudent attitude as we consider the issues before us. Grant each of us discernment such that our actions will be righteous and just. Provide us all with the self-discipline necessary to set our pride aside, understanding there are different points of view. Finally, Lord, we pray for compassion. May we always seek to understand before asking to be understood. As always, we offer prayers for the sick, the lonely, the many among us who suffer hardship or bear significant burdens. Lord, wrap them in your love and grace. We remember, too, our service personnel, emergency, fire, law enforcement, and our military, both at home and abroad. Watch over them, protect them, and help them to know they are remembered and their sacrifice is appreciated. It's in Christ's name I pray. Amen. We have a special guest with us this evening, Miss Nikki Tuttle, who is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. She's a member of our Union County 4-H program, and we welcome her this evening. So please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if the board will remain standing, she's going to come up and get a picture with us. Squeeze right in the middle between the four of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is our employee recognition, and I'll turn it over to our manager for special recognition.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Ashley, would you please come to the podium? Today is Ashley Lance's first day with Union County as our Social Services Director, and I think many of you are very familiar with Ms. Lance. She previously served as the Executive Director for Turning Point, and prior to joining Turning Point, she was with Safe Alliance as a Victim Service Manager. Ms. Lance has extensive community involvement experience and has been dedicated to Union County residents since beginning her undergraduate studies at Wingate University. Her passion and commitment to the community are evident to everyone with whom she interacts. And I would like to welcome Ashley to the organization, and you have an opportunity if you'd like to say anything to the board. And I know you feel like you're drinking from a fire hose on day one.
No, it's okay. I'm officially 9 hours in, maybe 10 at this point. So I am very grateful, very excited as well to be a part of Human Services and to be allowed to lead an organization such as Social Services. I've had lots of interactions in the past years through other organizations where I served at partnering with Social Services, so I'm happy to be there and to be a part of that team now. I have quite a learning curve, and I know that, and I knew that going in, so I just ask that you extend a little grace upon me as I wrap my brain about all of the many different dimensions and things that are happening. But from what I learned just in the 9 or 10 hours that I have been there, there seems to be some really good things happening, and I like the way that things are being structured and reorganized. It just seems that the team is happy. I got to meet almost everyone there today, so thank you for having me, and look forward to working with you.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, Ashley.
question, comment?
You know, I've got mixed feelings
Okay.
because you did such a fantastic job at Turning Point, but what a lot of people don't realize is she was also one of the leaders on our DHS board. So she's coming in not totally blind.
No, not totally.
But we're excited for you, and you've got huge shoes to be filled where you're leaving. So thank you very much, and we all look forward to working with you.
Thank you. And no worries about Turning Point. We have, they have now hired a new executive director, so it's going to be great.
And I was fortunate to meet Ashley as a member of the Waxhaw Weddington Rotary Club, and I will
The best Rotary Club.
right, and I will tell you that her enthusiasm and her optimism are contagious. So welcome to Union County. We're fortunate to have you.
Thank you. Okay.
That takes us to our first public hearing, which is a request for landmark designation of Siler Presbyterian Church. Ms. Cotto, do we have any opening comments for that?
Just a few, Chairman. Pursuant to Article 19 of Chapter 160A of the North Carolina General Statutes, counties and municipalities have the authority to adopt ordinances designating as historic landmark properties deemed and found by the Preservation Commission to be of special significance in terms of their historical, prehistorical, architectural, or cultural importance. Prior to adopting an ordinance designating a property a historic landmark, the governing board and the Preservation Commission must hold either a joint public hearing or a separate public hearing on the proposed ordinance. This evening, we have elected to hold a joint public hearing. It's my understanding that members from the Preservation Commission that are here have called their meeting to order prior to this public hearing. And those are the only comments I have before you conduct your public hearing.
Thank you very much. So at this time, we will open the public hearing. We have several folks who wish to comment. The first of those being Barbara Moore.
Good afternoon. I think it's night now, but it's been a long day. I'm Barbara Moore. I'm the chairman of the Historic Preservation Commission, and I want to thank the chairman and the commissioners, the manager, and Ms. West for allowing us time to speak tonight. Siler Presbyterian Church was organized in 1895, but it was in 1917 that they built the structure that they now occupy. In 1990, the Board of County Commissioners, in their wisdom, prepared this book. Siler was named as one of our historic properties then. It hasn't changed. We are so proud, and Sidney Hanna, who is our architectural survey, he writes our reports that go to the state, prepared one, and he was amazed that this building has been preserved. They still have all the interior basically the same. The outside pretty much the same. We started this process in May or June. In July, the Historic Preservation Commission approved it. In August, North Carolina Department of Archives and History approved it, and everyone was quite complimentary of what Siler has done for its church. I think we have some people who want to speak. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them. And Dan Barry is here to answer. But I did bring information I'm not going to present. But I do ask that you give this favorable consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker is it Libby Keels? Jibby Keels, I'm sorry.
My name is Jibby Keels, and I'm 82 years old. Most women don't like to tell their age, but I'm telling you because I want to say that's how long I've been a part of Siler Church, and Siler Church has been a part of me. I was baptized as an infant at Siler, which I don't remember. I have attended Siler my whole life. I joined the church at Siler around 12 years of age. I was married there in 1953, and I renewed my vows on our 25th anniversary and on our 50th anniversary there. We have 3 sons. They were all baptized as babies, and 2 of their weddings were held there. The highlights of the summers was Vacation Bible School, which I attended until I was too old to go. And then I took my children until they were too old to go. And I don't have words to express what the members of Siler have meant to me as a child, as a young adult, and now as a senior citizen. They have and are a guide in all that I do. Siler has been a beacon to our community for as far back as I can remember, and I'm sure it will be in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Stephen Burns.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Burns. I've been a resident of Union County for about 17 years. I've had 2 children who went to Weddington High School and graduated from Weddington. I've been involved with Siler Church for a number of years. I'm here to support the county, designating the original plat of the Presbyterian property as a historical property. The property, it was mentioned earlier, has been around since the early 1900s. In fact, the Belt family actually donated the brick for the initial building of the sanctuary there. It's a cornerstone of the Wesley Chapel community for over a century. It's a community we're often too quick to forget our history and our community foundations in exchange for new and modern facilities. When you visit Europe, it reminds you just how little historic preservations that we have here in the U.S. In Europe, many of the buildings have been preserved for 200 to 300 years, and we tend to tear down anything that's much more over 50 years here. We need to pause and make sure that we properly recognize the importance of our historic places, especially public places that have rich history and those that have been in the community for decades. The chapel reminds us of the happy times, such as wedding ceremonies, and the struggles of the difficult times. And the church today still stands as a foundation for the helping one another and the community with a number of outreach programs. To this day, you can still hear the sound of the church as its bell rings proudly on Sundays. And I strongly urge you to help us preserve the place of history in the Union County by designating the original plat of the Siler property as a historical property. I certainly appreciate your time and consideration.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Bruce Powell.
I too want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to such an august group. I am the pastor of Siler Church. I was not the organizing pastor in 1895, however. It is, however, named for the organizing pastor, Mr. J.W. Siler, Reverend J.W. Siler. Not only was the building built in that period of time that's been discussed, but the original building was over by the West Chapel Fire Department, where our cemetery is now. In 1906, I think it was, the church was given the property on the corner of Wesley Chapel of 84 and Waxman Trail Road. And they wanted to move the church there. So they literally moved the building, pulling it on logs with mules, pulling one out of the back and pulling it back around to the front and pulling it a little bit further. It took so long on the weekend to move the building, they worshiped in the middle of the road on Sunday morning of the weekend they moved it. We could not do that now, as you know. But that was a dirt road and no traffic. But the history of this church is phenomenal and amazing. I've been there for 25 years, and to see what God has done in the midst of that church and what God has allowed us to do to keep that sanctuary intact is just wonderful. And we would like for you to, I speak in favor and for holding that as a historical site in our county, and I hope you'll agree with us and make that something significant. So that that building, by the way, that was moved has been torn down. When the new one was done, it became the fellowship hall. In that sense, then it's been torn down. But we would ask you to consider that as a favorable motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The distinguished Daniel Barry.
He didn't show up. Good evening. Thank you all for an opportunity to address you. I'm president of the corporation and vice moderator of the session at Siler. And like you've heard tonight, we're really fortunate and blessed to have such a wonderful historic property at the corner of Waxhaw Indian Trail and Highway 84. I'm not going to reiterate what you've already heard, and much of it is in your notes for tonight. But we ask that you act favorably on the recommendation, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions? Thank you, sir. Jill Ammons.
Hi, thank y'all for hearing us tonight. And I'm just here as a representative of Siler, just as a regular old person who attends church there, got married there, and just has had the wonderful opportunity and experience of being a real original person from Wesley Chapel, North Carolina, my entire life, dropping like flies. But I am still there. One thing I just wanted to read, I have been a business owner in Wesley Chapel, and in our community, of course, that church has been there forever, and to newcomers, to old people like me who've been there forever and ever, the church on the corner, the church at the crossroads, means a lot to our community. People who go to our church and to people who don't go to our church. It's a light at that crossroads for our whole community. It's very, very important. As an art teacher, I found, as Barbara has mentioned, just the beauty of the architecture, the amazing craftsmanship of the building. It totally is amazing, and I invite you to go and look at it if you've never been there. I do ask for favor in what we are trying to do tonight. If you have never visited, please come by and see it. It's quite lovely and quite distinguished. And did want to point out just one more thing. Everybody else has said everything I was going to say, basically. But the Belk stores, the Belk brothers, donated the lights that still hang in our church to this day are from the Belk stores, downtown Monroe. So there's just another little added tidbit to your knowledge of what you want to find out about everything tonight. I also wanted to read, this is my favorite poem. As a business owner, I was in Wesley Chapel at one time, but this poem just says a lot about the way I feel and the way that newcomers in our community come and they find Wesley Chapel is it's pretty special. It's lost a lot of its charm, and we don't have that history, so we really ask for a favor tonight in this. But for people who call Wesley Chapel their new hometown, and I'd like to read this. This poem is entitled My Town. My town is the place where my house is found, my business is located, and where my vote is cast. It is where my children are educated, where my life is. My town has a right to my civic loyalty. It supports me, and I should support it. My town wants my citizenship, not my partisanship. My friendliness, not my dissensions. My sympathy, not my criticism. My intelligence, not my indifference. My town supplies me with protection, trade, friends, education, schools, churches, and the right to free moral citizenship. It has some things better than others, the best things I should see to make better. The worst things I should help to suppress. Take it all in all, it is my town, and it is entitled to the best there is in me. There's just a lot of emotions that are there for me as a real original person from Wesley Chapel. And again, as people come into our community and progress happens, I do ask that you find favor in keeping this and asking that it remain a historical structure in Union County. Thank you so much for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can I amend my remarks, Mr. Chairman?
We'll make an exception.
Thank you. I'll throw myself and plead to y'all, could you move the agenda action item from number 28 to earlier in the convention?
Got it right here, sir.
Thank you very much.
Would you like the gavel? Okay. That was our last speaker, so that concludes the public hearing. So we will close that. Our next item is item 5, PUD amendment for Ray Road Townhomes.
Yes, and Mr. Matthews has a few comments to make before you take public comment.
Okay.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. Let's see here. So this evening, have a public hearing request on a rezoning. Actually, it's sort of a combination project. It is a rezoning to a conditional rezoning of a parcel of property, and then a redesignation of an existing PUD, planned unit development, within the county. Those are legacy planning districts within the county. So I'll try to go over that hopefully in enough detail so you can understand what we're doing. So it's two components in one request, but there's two different issues going on here. So essentially what you've got here is you've got a piece of property that's on Highway 16. That's Ray Road. It's near the actual border of Mecklenburg County. I'll actually go into this and show. So this is the property that we're talking about here. This is Ray Road. This is the Mecklenburg County line here. This is the intersection of Tom Short and Ray Road. All of this area in here is designated as PUD 6 or PUD 6, and that's what I identified as a legacy zoning district. Within a PUD PUD 6 are different classifications. So there is an R20 classification, which deals with residential development. There's an R6 classification, which also deals with residential development. And then there's a B2 classification, which deals with commercial development. In this original PUD, which was a little over 790 acres, for the PUD 6, you had a maximum of 10% of the area could be B2 classification, that's the commercial designation. You could have a maximum of 35% of the area could be designated as R6, which is a higher density residential, and then the balance of it could be R20, which is really sort of a mid-range residential. The original PUD has maxed out on its commercial side. So the B2 has gotten all of the commercial acreage that it can get. However, they did not utilize all of their R6 designation within the PUD. They only used, out of the total they could have, which was 276.79 acres, they used 260.53 acres. So there was some land designation that they could use for R6 if they wanted to. What the applicant is actually requesting is that we redesignate a portion of this PUD to R6, which would allow them to utilize some of that existing R6 designation that they have. And the reason why it's also a conditional rezoning is this little piece of property right here. It's about 4 acres. It's actually not zoned part of the PUD. It is R40. It was left out of the PUD many, many years ago. It's my understanding that may have actually been owned by the county. Had something to do with some spray irrigation or to something to that effect. That has since been purchased and bought by the developers. And so what they're asking really to do is take this parcel property here, which is R40, rezone that to conditional zoning R6, and then take the portion of the PUD that is actually zoned or actually classified as R20 and reclassify that as R6. So that's kind of the details of it. I want to give you some of the project parameters so you can have some of that information as well. So go back to my slide here. What you'll see is these are just some photographs looking in either direction of the property. We're looking away from it, looking toward the property, looking down Ray Road, so just have an idea. You know, it's really undeveloped, and around it currently is undeveloped. Just to give you an idea of nearby municipalities, you've got this jurisdiction, I believe this is Marvin in this area right here. The rest of it is unincorporated. Development status, again, mostly undeveloped in this area. Just so you're aware, there was a rezoning recently here on this parcel here. This is a commercial side that the board approved not too long ago. I believe it's about 35,000 square feet of office and retail. In this location here, there's a Children's Lighthouse, which is an existing building there. This is actually the old Kohl's site in this area right here. It is near what we call a neighborhood center, currently shown in the land use plan as being single-family residential, but it again is near one of our neighborhood centers. There is quite a bit of floodplain on this property, so I do want to make you aware of that. The area that is really developable is really pretty much in this area here. The rest of this is primarily floodplain and mostly undevelopable. And that's transportation numbers here. So the key I want to talk about here for this project, out of memory, I don't have that over there. Let's see. Well, my site plan went away. So this is a request actually for townhomes. I didn't identify in the beginning what the actual request is. I gave you the zoning classifications, I gave you the changes that they're asking for. But what they are requesting is to use that R6 designation to do townhome developments. And our R6 designation does allow for higher density single-family residential development. And that's their intention, is to actually put 30 townhomes on that project. I will see if I can put that site plan back up, because I think it'd be important to be able to see that site plan. So what you have here is, this is Ray Road here. You've got, again, as I explained, most of the developable property is really along Ray Road in this area here. You can see this is all mostly floodplain in this back area. They're utilized, of course, the developable area, townhomes in this area. It is, we are requested, some of the conditions that they've agreed to meet is a connection to that commercial property, which is to be developed here. That also can benefit this site because ultimately there's intended to be, there's intended to be a signalized intersection somewhere in this area here at some point in the future. By allowing this site to tie into here with a connection, then these properties here would be able to get in and get to that signalized intersection to be able to go right or left. The way that project would work now is it would actually be a right in or right out only at their location, which that's fine. They understand that this connection does give them that ability to have full access at some point in the future. We have looked at this through our comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan does find that this is within our comprehensive plan. It does meet those goals. Even though it does say single-family residential, technically what you'll find is that townhomes are still classified as single-family residential. They're attached, but they're still classified as single-family residential. A little more dense than a standard individual home on an individual lot, but still we classify those as a single-family residential development. I know the developers here, they've got some a presentation for you. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Once the developer is done and the public, then I usually will come back up and give you a staff recommendation after that. Do you have any questions for me? Okay.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes, sir. Put this down and get up their presentation here. Do you know which one it is? This one? Right there, we got it.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners. Do appreciate this opportunity. My name is Matt Levesque with ESP Associates, and here on behalf of representing Pulte Homes, and we are the land planning engineering group that's assisting with this proposed project. Brian did a great job. Thank you so much, and I'll try to just, some of this will be redundant, so I'll try to just skip over those and just for sake of time. But this is just a larger scale area map of the property. You can see here is the actual county line, and then the site itself, and then adjacent to Marvin, right there. Total site's 20 acres, just shy of 21 acres. It's just a current aerial of the site. And then, as was noted, it is located just outside the node there, one of the community center nodes. And one of the things I did want to highlight here is it does recommend commercial uses, but also a mixture of residential uses. So we're thinking this could help achieve that goal, that single-family attached approach. This is just consistent with what was just explained, being this is the almost like a donut hole of what was not rezoned in the past. Attached here is the site plan that was submitted, the conditional plan for the R6 district, and then here is a blow-up of that area, which helps you see it a little bit better. So overall, with it being conditional, the benefit of that is we're capping at no more than 30 townhome units. And these are a nicer, it's a higher-end townhome product as well, and it'll be a higher-end townhome community and neighborhood. And as you can see, we're proposing quite a bit of vegetation along Ray Road, some nice landscaping to help buffer the community itself from Ray Road, and then also be a nice aesthetic approach to the community. It does have the right in, right out into the community itself, and then a private road through the neighborhood, which will connect to the existing or the commercial that's currently under construction right here. We did provide one access here for turnaround for emergency vehicles, and as well as residential vehicles, so they wouldn't have to go through the adjacent property if they didn't want to. Overall, the site, you can see there's going to be a lot of tree save in open space in the back. There is some floodplain and some wetlands, so we're staying clear of all that. We're staying outside all the buffers, and then providing all the appropriate buffers to adjacent properties as well. As part of the project, there is a existing sidewalk right at the bridge at the county line, and then there's a sidewalk that's being extended to the property line by the adjacent commercial property. So as part of this project, it will pick that up, that 5-foot sidewalk, and continue it down to the existing bridge. So there will be a pedestrian connection through Ray Road in front of the site, which is a big benefit here. And then a vehicular connection with the right in, right out, because there is a median. As you come down, you will get to the light, the future light, but also get another form of access vehicular into the community. It's just an illustrative which shows the full site itself. You can see the amount of open space there. And then here's also a graphic which just highlights the total open space for the site, which is over 10 acres total. So we have held a neighborhood meeting. We did hold that, and we did not have anybody show up to attend except for county employees, so we did get some good feedback. Planning director and transportation, or planning staff and transportation. And then we have gone through the plan with staff and worked with them on coming up with making sure we did have that vehicular connection and providing a plan that they would be in support of. And that was the goal and the hope. And then did work with the planning commission and did receive their recommendation for approval. So it's been a work in progress. We've been working on this for quite some time with the county, and do appreciate everyone working with us. And then also Boyd Stanley with Pulte Homes is going to just briefly talk about the homes that are being planned in the community.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. Boyd Stanley with the Pulte Group. And as you can see, our product, I'm sure you got your information packet. We're looking to do all 4 sides brick with cementous siding. There will be no vinyl siding. All the units, we call this our 30-foot wide product. It's 30 foot in width, and it has all units will have a double car garage with a carriage style decorative door, and square footage is around 2,600 square feet. And We developed the property to the south, Amber Meadows, which is in the town of Marvin, and also Tullamore. Amber Meadows is a age-targeted community. I'm not sure if you've been out there and looked at that. And then Tullamore is more of your estate lots to the south of that, or almost acre lots. So this provides our customers a different option. It does, as Matt pointed out, it does connect into the commercial. Folks that generally buy townhomes like walkability, so there's sidewalk network to to commercial and services. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, any other questions you have about our product, our company, or our site plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so just to recap, well, I'm sorry, you got to open up the public hearing. I'm getting a little ahead of myself there.
Okay. We will open that public hearing, and we have no one signed up to speak, so we will close that public hearing and hear your final comments.
So, again, the staff and our planning board reviewed this. The planning board did give a unanimous recommendation on this. Staff is also giving a favorable recommendation on this project. Number one, it does a lot to clean up the existing legacy PUD. This was a piece that was outstanding here. Honestly, on an R20 basis, I don't think that was the suitable use for that property. R6 and the townhomes really make a good transition, because you've got this commercial area that's coming here, that is certainly going to tie in very well with a little bit higher density residential here. You've got a commercial that's proposed across the street, identified, we call it the old Walmart site, but eventually, hopefully, that will come in and we'll have some commercial development on there as well. So this is a very good transition from the commercial to residential, a little bit higher residential. So we believe at the staff level that this is consistent with the area, it's consistent with our plan, and we would recommend in favor of this change. It is actually two different decisions when the board is ready to make a decision. It's actually, one is to amend the PUD, amend the PUD. That's where you would redesignate the original R20 to an R6 under the PUD. And then the second component, when the board is ready to make a decision, if you do choose to approve this, would be to rezone the property that's here from R40 to CZ R6. The conditions that we are suggesting, what the developers agreed to, are the sidewalk along Ray Road for that connectivity, connection from the project into this commercial site, that they meet our stormwater regulations for our cluster development. Again, this normally would not have any stormwater regulations, but because this is a rezoning, conditional rezoning, we can make that request. They've agreed to meet our stormwater requirements under our ordinance for cluster development. And also, it must meet all of the site-specific guidelines on their conceptual plan. So anything on their conceptual plan that they've identified, those are all conditions that they must meet on that project. And I'll be happy to answer any more questions you might have.
Mr. Simpson.
Brian, can you break down the acreage again? My understanding is it's 20 acres and
Yes, sir.
just under 5 for the townhomes?
That's correct. So what you have is, this is roughly about 4 acres here. This is the R40 piece. Then you've got this piece is probably close to 11 here. And this piece is just shy of, I think, 9. What they're actually changing is really this area in here, because that is the area that can really be redesignated to R6. This will just be a leftover piece, which is not to be developed. It's part of the development package, but they're not going to develop it. They're going to leave it basically as open space. It'll still have a PUD 6 designation, but it'll ultimately still have that R20 designation on it, because 16 acres is all they can designate towards the PUD 6. So what you'll get is a total of 16 acres added into the PUD 6, and this section here will actually be rezoned to R6. Does that make sense?
So it is only approximately 16 acres that would be be taking action on?
It's 16 acres that are redesignated to PUD 6. Yes, sir.
Are the remaining acres buildable?
No, sir, they're really not. You know, you noticed on there they gave you a sort of a gross density. Again, that's based on the entire size of the property. Obviously, you've looked at what's developable, that's a much higher number. But again, what we base density on is the total project, not just on what they're building on. So the gross density is about 1.5 units per acre. Because take into account, none of the rest of the property can be developed in the future.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Brian. Takes us to our next item, which is another public hearing on Marvintown Center.
And again, Mr. Matthews has a few comments to make before you take public comment.
Okay. Just slide down just a little bit. That piece is actually right here. And let's see. So in this request, what you have is the original property is, we call this calls the Coles site. This is already developed in commercial. There is retail, there's some office in this location, other uses which are all commercial. There's a daycare center that's back in the back area. What the developer is really proposing here is a PUD amendment. And in a PUD amendment, if there are any changes to the site plan, that must come to the board for what's called a PUD amendment. It also requires a special use permit to be issued, and that is through the Board of Adjustment. The applicant has already gone to the Board of Adjustment. They've heard this request. The Board of Adjustment agreed with the applicant, and they have issued the special use permit for this project. But before it can continue, a PUD amendment must also be authorized by the Board of Commissioners. Because of that, that's why you're here tonight for the public hearing on this item. Just to give you some details about it. So again, the site is what we call the old Coles site. You know, again, that's an existing picture of the Coles facility. So let me get to the aerial. It's all zoned commercial in this area. So again, that's why it's designated in red. It's already used for commercial. It's already zoned commercial in the area. It is in the center of our neighborhood center in our comp plan, so it certainly falls within the commercial designation for our comp plan. To look at the site plan for this, and I know it's not easy to see, but this is the existing Coles building here. There is a daycare in this location here. It doesn't show up, but there's actually been a medical office or dental office building that was built in this location, and that was approved as the original, one of the original permits. What the applicant's actually asking to do is add some additional space within this project. So that's why it's coming to you for a PUD amendment. And that is essentially this. This is that existing building that has been built in that area. This is the proposed new building. It is essentially a mirror image of this building here. Again, sort of a medical office building. That's 5,000 square feet that the developer is asking for, and that's a site-specific plan. The balance of the request, which is another 5,000 square feet, is not on a site-specific plan. They are designating that 5,000 square feet will go somewhere in this area here and will be specifically for the daycare. So if the daycare were to want to build that 5,000 square feet here, if they wanted to add it onto the building, they could do that. However, that still requires a PUD amendment. That still has to come back to the board, and you have to approve that site plan because they have not submitted a site plan specific to this. The request is including the additional 5,000 square feet, but it doesn't have a site plan for it. So again, sometime when a site plan is submitted, when they're ready for construction, they'll have to come back to the board for that approval. The Board of Adjustment heard that request, and one of their stipulations was that additional 5,000 square feet could be for the daycare only. It would not be used for any other purposes. So if at some point in time it came back, that would not be for office uses. It could be only for the daycare facility. And then that's why it was decided that that could be here, it could be here. That decision would come at a later date. So let's go here. So the request again is to add an additional 10,000 square feet to an existing commercial development. That requires a PUD amendment. Within the PUD amendment, it is again a site plan specific project. So even if the board were to decide to approve this at some point in time, the 5,000 square feet designated for the daycare would have to come back to the board for an approval for that, because it is not a site plan specific project at this time. Only this building here is site plan specific. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have on this project.
No questions. Thank you, Brian.
All right, thank you, sir.
This time we'll open the public hearing. We have no one signed up to speak, so we'll close the public hearing.
On this one, same thing. The staff does feel that this request is consistent. It is already a commercial project. They're merely adding some additional square footage to that. Again, I think our comp plan talks about promoting additional commercial and office space, and this is an opportunity to do that without any significant impacts to the adjacent properties. There's already commercial there. We believe that that's consistent with our plan, and staff would recommend approval of that. The planning board also recommended approval of this request. Now, I'll answer any questions you might have on that.
None further. Thank you, Brian.
Very good. Thank you.
All righty, that takes us to our informal comments. We have one person signed up to speak, Myron George.
Good evening, Chairman Simpson and members of the board, Ms. West and Ms. Cotto. It's nice to be here with you tonight. My name is Myron George, and while my wife and I lived in Indian Trail for quite a while, we've recently moved to Salisbury. We still spend a lot of time here in Union County because we have friends and family here, and we are still members of the First Baptist Church of Indian Trail. So tonight I'm here to represent the members of our church family. And we wanted to start off this new year, 2018, to just let you know that we sincerely appreciate the work that you do for us as our elected leaders. We want to encourage you as you continue to serve in your roles on the county council, because we know that this is often a difficult and thankless job. We also know that you do this sometimes with great personal sacrifice, and not sacrifice just to you, but also sacrifice to your families as well. So tonight we just want you to know that we appreciate you and that we're praying for you. As followers of Jesus Christ, we take the command to pray for our elected leaders very seriously. We want you to know that we, as a church, are asking the author of all wisdom to equip you for every challenge that you have as you make these important decisions for the tens of thousands of people who live and work here in Union County each day. And to remind you that we are praying for you, we brought each of you a gift tonight. It's sort of a unique gift, and we hope you will refer to it often. It's called a Founder's Bible. And of course, it being a Bible, it does have God's Word in it, but it also contains hundreds of accounts of the compelling and true history of the founders of our great country. These accounts clearly demonstrate that there were two things that our founders relied upon as they struggled and worked to lay the foundation for our nation. Those two things were God's Word and also prayer. No matter how the historians may portray our early history, the facts bear out that it was only with God's divine help and wisdom and the principles contained in this book that the foundation of our America was laid. So as you turn to the presentation page of these Bibles we would like to present to you, you will see the signatures of those who have been praying for you and those who have committed by their signatures and pledged that they will continue to pray for you as you continue to serve. Unfortunately, we were unable to put all of the signatures in each Bible because we had almost 3,000 people of our church to sign these pledges to pray for you all. So we hope you will accept these Bibles as a token of our appreciation and that they will remind you of our commitment to continue to stand behind you in prayer. So thank you very much for your service to us, to our county, to our state, and our country. May God bless you as you continue to serve as our elected leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, may we present you with these Bibles at this time?
Certainly.
I think he wants to hand it to the members. Mr. 8, Mrs. L.
We'll see that he gets it. Give it to his card and we'll see that he gets it. And stand right here. We're going to get a picture. Thank you very much. Great.
Thank
you
you
so
sir.
much.
Appreciate it. Also want to say hello to you, Ms. Governor.
Good to see you.
Lynn, nice to see you.
Good to see you.
All righty, that concludes our informal comments. It takes us to the additions, deletions, and adoption of the agenda. And if the board will bear with me, I have a couple that I'd like to get out of the way if we can first. First, I'd like to ask that we remove item 25 under old business for a later time. And I would like to ask that we move item 28, which is the Siler Church request. Even though it was under probably new business, we'll move it to 25A. Then we have a resolution of condemnation we need to add. I'll make that 29A. Any others from the board? Commissioner Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we could, I'd like to add a discussion of water line extensions in the Rocky River sub-basin.
Okay, we'll make that 25B. And anyone else? And I'm going to simply ask, since there was no opposition, Jeff, as I understand it, we can add the two. We're good? What's the pleasure of the board? Do y'all want to go ahead and add those, or you need further information? That's the Railroad Townhomes in the Marvin Town Center.
I'm okay with adding those.
Okay? Stoney? Okay. We'll make that 29B and 29C. So, I'll offer a motion to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. And next item is our consent.
Motion to accept as presented.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Takes us to item 25A, Siler Presbyterian Church designation.
Yes, Commissioners, and the action proposed this evening is adoption of an ordinance designating as a historic landmark property known as Siler Presbyterian Church.
Move to adopt as presented.
We have a motion. Any discussion? Commissioner Rushing?
I just want to say something. I was very impressed, and the lady that was talking about the newcomers and the old residents there. I've got a story. I've got a good friend that came from New York that lives in Wesley Chapel, and their daughter is when she was born. They said, "Here's your new Southern Belle," so their middle name's Belle. So you got to remember, there's a lot of kids that are there that are Wesley Chapel residents, Union County natives. So thank you for all of your comments, and I'm excited about this.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you, folks, for coming out.
Oh, y'all don't have to leave.
More to come.
Give them a minute or two to clear the courtroom. Okay, that takes us to item 25B, Commissioner Rushing.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Helms and I had an opportunity to meet with Ed BOCC and Jeff Crook the other day to get some more information. And some of the questions that we had in the presentation that we received recently on water line extensions, there was an option put forth on level 1 and 2, which would be the main and secondary roads in the county. And what we were unsure of, and Mr. BOCC also was unsure of, is the engineering that would need to be done. So he came up with an idea of doing a motion where we had the water line extensions looked at by staff to see what would be could be done, along with the extension of the transmission main, and how do we pay for it. So I would ask that we direct staff as part of the water project to look at the engineering and the economics of doing the main and secondary roads in the county as presented in level 1 and 2 in our presentation.
Okay, we have a motion discussion.
I would just ask the purpose of the study.
Mr. BOCC was unsure for the engineering, for the hydraulics, whether or not, what size line that if we put in. Tonight we'll be voting on a main, a transmission main, and what he was unsure of is if it would need to be bigger, smaller, what would go along with that to facilitate that. If at any point in time the commissioners chose level 1 or 2, he was unsure, and of course we were unsure of what the requirements for that line would be. It could be the line has to be bigger, smaller, we don't know. So he would like the opportunity as staff to look at that and come back and tell the commissioners.
I guess I'm confused. Are we looking at running lines up 601, for example, or?
Yeah, the main and secondary roads. as presented in our presentation that he gave to us recently.
But we can't force anyone to connect to county water.
Right.
Aren't you concerned that that would open up significant development along those roads?
No, not at all.
That's kind of counterintuitive to what we have in the rest of the county. When a line gets put through, it kind
Right.
of spurs development on the residential side.
That's right. And one thing that we have, one thing that we look at is what developers do when they extend lines. And since we're going to be extending a transmission main, which the developer is not paying for, in my understanding, we'll be paying for it as a county project, that if we can do that and if we can justify that, and that's part of the study, is to see the economics of it. Would it be, can it be paid for through the enterprise fund, or does it have to be paid for through maybe a possible bond? How would we pay for it? I spoke to 2 of our state representatives last week, and they said there was possible some grant money available from the state and the bond project that was passed recently that would be available. So we need to look at all those options before we decide, if we commit to do something as far as this line transmission main, that it will be able to handle something of this magnitude if our board or any future board decides to go with the presentation as level 1 and 2.
That the 36-inch transmission main could or could not handle it?
Yeah, Mr. Gosecki was unsure what effect that would have on the project. The hydraulics of it, whether we would need to do something in a different manner. They've not decided yet that if it's going to be a 36-inch line or the size of the line. That would all be in part of the engineering of the project.
Which line?
The transmission main.
Is that here tonight? Which is? If you don't mind, please, Ed, just so I understand. I guess I'm a little confused, if you can help me understand. Are we changing the 36-inch raw water coming from the proposed Norwood site?
No, not the raw water line is still the same 36-inch raw water line. The project as envisioned right now on the Atkin project will be the 12 million gallon per day water treatment plant. And the preliminary engineering indicates a 36-inch water transmission line that will connect that treatment plant to all the existing water lines in in that Yadkin Basin area. The discussions we had last week were if the board does decide to move forward with a water line extension program, as was briefly discussed in the board workshop on the 16th, we would need to, the suggestion was we would need to first evaluate the feasibility of doing that line extension program. Just what would it cost to run water lines down the primary and secondary roads? How exactly would you do that? I mean, the analysis we gave the board was a very quick GIS-driven approximation. I wouldn't even call it an estimate. It was just ran water lines, gave a unit cost price per line of linear foot of pipe. So the feasibility study would be looking at what would it cost to actually run those pipelines, how would you connect them physically to the rest of the distribution system, what side would those pipelines need to be, what would be the economics of that, what would be the anticipated number of people that would connect, what kind of revenue would you generate, what possible revenue sources could be utilized to pay for that water line extension program, and what demand would that generate on the system, and would that additional demand either necessitate any change to the distribution system, including that 36-inch line, or would it just change the useful life of that pipeline and say, okay, instead of that being a 20-year pipeline life before you'd have to expand it or parallel it, you'll get 20 years or something less than that. So that was the nature of the conversation was if the board was to do a line extension program, what's the feasibility of it? What's the engineering requirements that would go with it? How would you pay for it? And then also what would the impacts be on the regional water supply? Would it have a significant increase on the overall demand and change any of the other requirements?
What kind of time frame do you need for something like that?
I think it would be a 6 to 9 months study to undertake that. I would assume this would be a relatively high level engineering analysis just to how to move water into that area. The biggest challenge I think is on the economic analysis of how many people would connect and what kind of revenue would you generate, what are the financial sources are available to fund a program like that.
Do we have any idea how many people on average are connecting when we do something like that?
I don't have numbers on that. That's something that we would need to look at. You know, we obviously have water lines in the rural parts of the county now. We need to go back and look at, I think that would be an input into the study. What's our history been? When we have water lines in these areas, what kind of rate of connection do we have?
Is this something that you could do in-house, or would you have to go outside of the staff to be able to?
This would require us to go and get outside consultant to assist on this.
Any idea on the cost?
I would guess in the order of $75,000 to $100,000. You need to do some modeling of the system, and that alone is going to be a $10,000, $20,000 item just to do the modeling to see where water would flow and how you would get it there.
Before I vote to do something like this, I would like to have a little more information as to, a little more detail as to what you're looking at and an estimate on the cost. I know you threw $75,000 to $100,000 out there, but that's a big number if we don't really have a scope narrowed down. So what I would ask is if we can get a little bit more information before I can vote on it. I speak for myself only, but that's a big expenditure of funds on something that we added to the agenda tonight.
Well, if it's over $100,000, that authorization would absolutely need to come back to the Board of County Commissioners. We're really, at tonight's meeting, looking for direction from the board as to what does the board really want to be included in the study. And that's, you know, the direction we're looking for, and then we could scope it out in more detail and get a price developed and bring it back.
Mr. Hills.
Yes, sir. I enjoyed our interaction, and it was very learning the other day that Commissioner Rushing mentioned it. This water project has been presented all along that we're going to bring water to Yadkin Valley of Union County. And I understand that there's already some water there that we're doing through an IBT from the Catawba. But, you know, we've got health and safety issues in water. So I think we need to understand how we could move. And I think in your presentation you have a list of demonstrate the taps that will be available along that pipe. And if those taps are going to be utilized, we need to understand this information that this motion is trying to obtain. So I have to support going forth, figuring out how we can protect all citizens of Union County with clean, safe drinking water. I had a conversation with a constituent, happens to be a councilman in one of the cities. He said, I just had my water tested. He said it came back, it's 100 times the approved level of arsenic in the water. So, you know, a lot of our citizens hadn't tested their water. So this is one of the options, and actually this gentleman lives very close to where we're going to put our treatment plant. So I think we need to understand how we can utilize that water to protect our citizens.
Commissioner Rushing.
We recently voted to do a study of bringing emergency water and upgrading our lines from Mecklenburg to Union and some of the other issues with Anson County.
Yes.
How much did we pay for that study? Or how much was that study? $150,000? $170,000. So I mean, I think that this would be completely reasonable when we're looking at a $30 million pipeline to include something like this. So I would ask that you support it just from the standpoint of they're going to bring us back the information I think that you're looking for. And
I'm supportive of the water. I just, when I look at the timeline, we're looking best case scenario 2022 before the plant is up and running.
Yes.
Even if we were to run lines out there, my concern is the timing of it. So when I look at if we're really concerned about arsenic in the water and we're concerned about some other things, my preference would be that we utilize some funds to do the water line extension program and maybe go from 1,000 feet to 2,000 feet. We provide whole home filtering systems for the arsenic in the meantime, but something to address it now, not in 2022.
And I'm in complete agreement with the extension of the lines. I mean, the program we used to have, I thought fit those needs a lot better. and we are going to have to look at that as part of this, trying to get those lines extended. Homeowners will be close, but not, the $200 to $400 million option. With every road, we can't do that probably even with the amount of water that we have. But I definitely upgrading that program as well would be part of it, and I'm in complete support of that. But when we vote to build tonight, when we vote to build the treatment plant, then we're going to also be doing that transmission line, and this will be part of what kind of line do we need to put in, where do we need to put connections and things like that, and if they need to be engineered with that. If the board has the desire, we need to do that as we're voting to build the plant.
Mr. Hales.
I agree with Commissioner Rush, and I also agree with Commissioner Simpson in the sense that we definitely need to address our water line extension program, and I'd suggest that we make that a separate issue at maybe the next meeting, address how we're going to do that. They are intertwined, but not mutually exclusive, So, but I think we need to understand how we can support the county. That's what we've sold, what's been sold to our citizens, and we've had conversation with past commissioners and legislative people that have the same understanding. So, like I said, I recommend that we do this study, and then we address on a separate issue the water line extension. I call it the Coles method. You got up early in the morning, you get in line, you get water, and so we can do better than that for our citizens.
Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to be presumptuous, but I was a part of the meeting, and I appreciated the time of Commissioners Helms and Rushing in discussing this. Mr. Goszewski had come up with a motion based on our discussion that might give a little bit more detail and scope.
Do you have that?
I do have that, if you'd like to see it.
I'll be glad to read that.
Sure.
And if I may, one more question. What we're asking you to do, is this consistent with the comprehensive plan that we adopted? Or is this a deviation or some modification of that?
This would be a modification of the plan. So based upon the outcome of this study, if the board were to then want to move forward with the adoption of moving these lines forward, that would be an amendment to your master plan, moving that into your plan. And the purpose of the study is really to look at that feasibility. Can the county afford to run water lines in this area? To what extent? What will it cost? How do you pay for it? And from that, the board could then make a decision as to whether or not to amend the master plan and provide direction to staff to move forward with that program.
My concern would be, when I look at those main roads, that it would cause the residential growth that many of the people in the county are complaining about to take off, because now you're opening up whole new tracts of land to development, and I don't know the number of people, but even if there's 300 people on the road, there's no way we can force them to hook up, correct?
That's correct.
But we could entice them maybe with minimized sewer tap amounts or something if they have a need. There's options out there.
There's options, and it depends which pot of money you're using to fund those options, because there's restrictions on the enterprise fund and in terms of discounted rates and those kinds of things. So, but that would be part of the study. How would you, if the engineering analysis says that this is a $30, $40, $50 million program to run water lines, how do you pay for that? What are the sources of income? What does the property owner contribute? What can the utility contribute? Is there grant funding? Is there general tax fund contribution? And to look at all those alternatives to see, can you make this feasible?
And just in that vein, Representative Arp and Senator Tucker both explained that there was, depending on which one you talk to, there's the $350 million to $750 million in grant monies for water line extensions to counties in need. We may or may not qualify for that, but we never know until we ask. So they both encouraged us to ask for those monies to help extend lines to people that needed it. The motion, just to clean up the motion would be to direct staff to conduct an engineering and economic study to determine the preliminary infrastructure requirements and potential cost and funding options of a water line extension program that could utilize some of the capacity of the Yadkin River water
Water supply project.
Water supply project, yeah, you got a lot of letters here. To meet the needs of existing Union County residents by extending finished water lines along at least the existing primary and secondary roads within the Yadkin River water basin of Union County, currently not served by Union County water lines. And that was Mr. Gosecki's language that cleans it up, right?
Further questions or discussion?
Just one final question. With the motion, that would cap it at $100,000. Anything else would have to come before the board?
Any contract over 100,000 has to come back to the board for approval.
Yes, sir. And if the board desired, even if it was under $100,000, we could bring it back to you before we executed. That's, at the board's discretion as well.
Okay. Thank you.
I would just say that we have worked diligently to move forward this Yadkin River water supply project. I think it's we know the need in the Yadkin River Basin for water, and I believe 2022 is our projected date that we need that water by. So we need to stay on track with that. I certainly see no problem with being proactive and exploring how that water might serve us in the future. So with that, we have a motion on the floor. If there's no further discussion, we will vote. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you, sir.
May I ask a clarification? Does the board wish for that contract to come back to you all, regardless of the dollar amount, or not? Or just notify you?
I think the 100,000 is sufficient.
Okay.
Authorize
All right.
others.
Okay, that takes us to item 26, annual report for Monroe Union County Economic Development.
Yes, it's that time of year for Mr. Platay to sing his praises as to what a good year we have had. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Well, thank you very much. Chairman Simpson, Commissioners, Manager Cotto, it's my pleasure again to present to you tonight the annual report for the economic development activity for Union County. 2016, being a presidential election year, like every presidential election year, tends to stymie some investment as companies tend to wait to see what direction the country is going to go in. And so like that, 2016 was a weaker year. So as in 2017, some of the political headwinds were out of our way, businesses began to flourish, and the economy has exploded. So as a result, we've had a sizable uptick in our activity. So 17 was a good year. There we go. So just to set the basis for everything, I just want to go over a few general facts about the county and where we are from where we sit. So Union County's labor force is nearly 120,000 people. Over the last 3 years, that has grown almost 10,000 people. So while we have maintained and bragged about the fact that we have one of the lowest unemployment rates within the region of the Charlotte area, that sometimes that can be viewed as a negative. Well, it's that growth in that working age population as those people are coming of age and people are moving in to help support that industry. The 10,000 or so that has come in has really offset some of that negative that you may have with a low unemployment rate, because we're able to still find the jobs or the workers to go into the jobs that are needed. If you look at Union County, there's roughly 15,000 people in our manufacturing that are working in manufacturing. And based on just a conservative number, that's around $582 million of annual payroll that sits there in our county and churns, and that supports the retail, the residential growth, the buying new cars, everything that will help grow the tax base. And again, this is a conservative number. There's no multipliers attached to that, no job money multipliers or money multipliers. That's a strict, hard number. And so when you add in all the others, it's a much bigger impact of what manufacturing does for us. And finally, we're still sitting at number 1 in the aerospace cluster for the state. So very proud of that fact. We now have 23 companies within the aerospace cluster employing nearly 4,500 people. So that's fairly significant. One of the most important things in our office is the business retention and expansion. That's where our work plan begins, and where everybody in our office really has had some work experiences in the business retention side. So Ron Mail, sitting in the audience, handles that existing industry effort for us, and he does a tremendous job in incredible customer service as he aids those companies throughout any needs that they may have. It could be problems, it could be good things. Again, companies are built to make widgets. If they have any hiccups that they're not used to, we have the experience and knowledge from other companies in which to provide them guidance. And so Ron does a great job of that. He has a natural caring heart that is built perfect for that position. And his side of the organization is by far our busiest and probably the most critical when you look at the tax base that we need to take care of. And looking at some of the activities within that side, this year we've had over 200 interactions, almost nearly 300 actually, interactions with our industry. Industry appreciation event that we hold every year, the Hook and Slice. This year had about 160 attendees at that, and again, those are the business leaders, the decision makers in those companies, and their supervisors. It's one of those events that we selfishly look to create partnerships on the golf course and at dinner and put people together that can create more inter-county commerce. So if someone has a part that they're buying out of Tennessee, we know that part is being made in Union County. We put those people together trying to get them to purchase and keep that commerce here locally. So everything we do has a purpose. The seminars that we hold, we primarily focused that on supervisory training skills, and we've had just in 2017, 200 people went through our seminars. So it's a phenomenal number, and companies sending multiple people to this. And so at a nominal fee, roughly $100 per person, just to cover our cost, it has allowed us to really have a big impact with that. Gretchen Carson, who has now left us to go to Mecklenburg County, really headed up that program. Ron will continue that program. Then the wage survey. This is one of those, as most of these activities don't show up on the scorecard of what our office does. But the wage survey has been a phenomenal success. This is the third year that we've completed it in 2017. We'll be doing the fourth one here soon. And as a result of this effort, a handful of companies have used this tool to increase, go back to their leadership at the corporate headquarters or locally, to increase their wages and therefore increase their competitiveness here in this labor market. So it's affected nearly, of those folks that have taken this tool that we know about and raised their wages, it's roughly affected 15% of our manufacturing workforce. Just one example was a company further west in the county took this to their corporate headquarters and got a 20% across the board increase for their hourly workers. That resulted in $600,000 of new income into this county just from that wage survey. So, and it helped them as they were trying to retain employees. So we're again glad that we can provide those services. And again, it's not from, there's the Employment Association and other groups out there that will do wage surveys. This is data that the companies themselves have asked for. So it's very current, very active, and those numbers are real. It's roughly 40% of the workforce is what we're getting data from. So, and then one of the biggest things that we do is the visitations. Go out and actually walk the floors with the leaders of these companies, see what they're facing with issues. And so this year, 95 companies were touched between Gretchen and Ron, which is roughly half of the companies that we track. So it was a very good year in that. And then other things, small things like lighting rebates and other grants that we tried to provide to our industries. This year we ended up having $32,000 go into some lighting rebates that allowed them to transition from incandescent or metal halide bulbs to some more LED, more energy efficient measures, which save them a lot of money in the long run. And they have skin in the game with those projects. When Ron's out there visiting, he comes up with issues, or what we refer to as cases in our office. And so those cases get opened, and then we try to resolve those for the company or do what we can to get them in touch with the right people to help close it. And that's what he does a great job with that. And 85% of those cases that we opened this year were closed successfully. And it would have been higher, but actually some of those cases were discovered in December, November timeframe, so they're still open and active as we're trying to close those. So They cover basically anything and everything you can imagine, from utilities and labor force, transportation, stormwater issues, whatever that may be. So as you look at the wage survey, it's pretty interesting that we're not only competitive to recruit companies, we're competitive to keep the labor force here. A lot of that is because of the quality of life that we have. And so 64% of those manufacturing employees actually live in the county. And what's even more incredible, and I've been in York County and Chester County in South Carolina, these numbers are much higher than theirs. That 19% of the executives actually live within roughly those three areas of the border with Mecklenburg. So Waxhaw, Weddington, and Marvin handle roughly 20% of our executive staff. So that's a great thing that those people are here. The average hourly wage when I started in Union County in 1999 was $9 an hour. Today it's $18.64. That's incredible to see that doubling of the hourly wage. And most of that is attributed to the aerospace coming in and forcing all those ships to have to rise with the tide and pay a competitive wage. And that's just on the hourly side. On the salary side, non-executives, you're seeing an average of $65,000 to $72,000. So those supervisors, engineering managers, they're making a very, very good wage. And that's what's really important to understand is the jobs that we create are careers. Looking at the wage survey, over 80% of these companies are paying benefits, 401ks, retirement programs, dental. I mean, they're getting a lot of benefits by being in that manufacturing workforce. It is a place that you can make a wonderful life without having the expense of going to college. So if you look at it in relation to some of the other things, the unskilled rate, still 14.25. That's a pretty high rate for unskilled labor. And then as you get into the average skilled labor rates, 22.90. When you start getting into the aerospace, high precision medical, the Glenmark and the pharmaceutical side, you're looking close to 28, 29, 30 plus dollars per hour. All businesses, regardless, service, retail, manufacturing, schools, everything lumped together, Union County has an average of $20.45 per hour. And so looking at where the manufacturing per hour is, and you start thinking about what the executive pay, the managerial pay, and some of those ultra high skilled jobs, they're well above the general business rate. So just some good information there. One of the things that we tout too is the labor draw. So in the wage survey, we look at the zip codes where people live, and so basically the white collar or the salary positions come from the orange circle. The blue circle is your hourly or blue collar area. And then that green is that intersection. And that's what makes us really competitive. That's the spot that you can put a manufacturing plant. It's high-tech, high-precision manufacturing, and draw from both. So people can live in Uptown Charlotte if they care to, and the drive is not too terrible to come in, because that's the labor force that we're actually drawing from. Those are real addresses where people are living. Or if you want to have a much nicer quality of life out in the rural setting, you have that ability too. And that will only increase. I think we'll probably extend that range when the expressway opens up, because you can actually get into that green spot a little bit easier. But that's where, when we start to sell, that's a really competitive location, because you can get a PhD or some other high engineer to come in, but you can also find the technical workers that you need that come with the rural skills that we need for the manufacturing. So then if you look at the benchmarks, this is where we're basically measured every day. For 2017, new capital investment coming into the county was $83.6 million. So we're very, very proud of that number. And most of that was really generated from March on. So we're very proud of that number. And it's indicative of the overall economy and what we're seeing out there. And so our activity level is extremely high right now. What was one of the things we talked about the other day that you were asking about, our average projects, Commissioner Simpson, was around $6 or $7 million. Now it's around 14 if you look at these. So that's another sign of what we're targeting, high capital investment, and not necessarily the number of jobs, highly productivity environments, high automation, that just adds to that tax base, but it doesn't require that labor need that when you're at sub 4% unemployment, that you don't really have, we would not entertain a project that had 5,000 jobs because it would decimate the existing industry base. So again, in all of those projects, we're in precision manufacturing, transportation, aerospace, chemical, medical device, plastics, and construction materials. 138 new jobs. Again, as I mentioned earlier, these are careers, not just jobs, with benefits. And as a result of that, again, a very conservative number, that's sitting at $5.3 million of new wages coming into the county on top of the number that we cited earlier. And again, based on the wage survey, we know 60% or more of those will reside in Union County. The pipeline generated from January to December was 107 new projects. So that's one of the highest years we've ever had in the history since I've been here since '99. That is, again, an incredible workload coming into the office. So of those 107, 54 are still active looking at the county. 53 were lost. And this is an updated number from what we told you before. We mentioned 77% were lost to lack of product. The actual number now for the whole year is 70%. Is what we lost due to lack of a building or a site to meet their qualifications. Again, we've got one building right now available in Union County. And so 42, the other thing that's really nice about this is looking at the data as we track what municipalities they're interested in or locations where we can promote to this company to find a match. 42 of those 107 were actually looking at the entire county. So it shows the competitive nature that our county does have, not just in certain pockets like a Monroe, but the actual whole county is now in play. And so we're looking for that to grow again with the expressway opening up more area. So looking out into 2018 and beyond, we're very bullish here. If you look at the funnel, several years ago we would come to you and show you, and our funnel was inverted. It was very little coming into it, and we were working a lot of existing projects that had stayed in play. Now the funnel is the way it should be. So we got a lot more coming in because you tend to lose projects in that suspect stage and prospect stage. Suspects is where we first get information request of us of sites or buildings. The prospect is when they've dipped into the pool a little bit deeper and trying to get a little bit more information about the county. When it's a project time, they're very specific on a site, or they've actually come and put their feet on the ground in the community, and that's the sort of the qualifications that we have. And then projects that we know that aren't dead, that due to a business cycle issue or something with the company, maybe an acquisition, that they have a project that has gone inactive, but it's worth keeping up with. So those are the 19 on the inactive list. And we have had one announcement already this year. It was a small little company went into the former Pods building in Indian Trail. So it was a German company that came over, automotive related. So we're excited to already have a win in this year. So based on what you have already incentivized that we've talked about in closed sessions and brought to you in public hearings, as well as projects that we know that we're really close on, that we anticipate somewhere in the 60 to 90 million, probably within the first 3 quarters of this year. So again, another banner year coming forward with us, we hope, assuming everything else plays. I'm not jinxing myself, but hopefully everything will come forward the way that we're seeing it. Again, we're targeting small number of job type companies with that high capital investment, low water consumption and high electric use. Those are always good for us because again, the infrastructure is already here basically around most of the areas of the county that can support that. Sectors, again, clearly aerospace because it is our primary significant cluster, as well as the metalworking and plastics, chemicals, automotive, and now distribution. Again, as that expressway opens up, we see a change coming, a dramatic shift for this county that we have not seen before, that other counties have had the benefit of a very good road system like an interstate. We now have something in that caliber that will open up third or fourth quarter, and that's going to dramatically change that makeup and allow us to provide job opportunities for a different class of skilled worker. So again, as I mentioned, the expressway, looking ahead, we're not even I don't think we fully appreciate the change that this is going to bring to us. And so we're so excited to see that. Been waiting for a long time. When I first started here and they were talking about it, it seemed like such a dream. And to now have this sucker ready to open up is very exciting. So between that, and then as you have probably grown numb to me saying it so many times with the sites and building issue, product, that, and then we had the Wingate study that also discussed the balance that we need to try to recapture a little bit of in the county. Your decision to move forward, we appreciate so very much, and very excited as we look at this, at the potential site that we discussed at the last work session. We've already had multiple discussions with the landowners, and that is moving right along. So we're excited about hopefully in the next 12 to 18 months, maybe getting started with a new industrial park. So other than that, I do appreciate the opportunity to represent Union County. It is easy to sell something that you love. So thank you so much.
Questions? I would just like to say how much I enjoyed the groundhog event.
Yes, sir.
It's always eye-opening and a joy to be there. So I appreciate the invitation. That was great.
Not all the topics are applicable, but they definitely will generate discussion.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to be true to my promise. Been here an hour and a half. I'm going to take a 10-minute recess.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we'll start back, and that takes us to item 27 on our agenda, the Yadkin River Water Supply Project.
Yes, Commissioners, the item before you this evening is to establish the criteria for the use of design-build project delivery method and approve the design-build project delivery method for the project, and the project being the Yadkin Water Plant as well as the finished water line. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ed.
Thank you, John. Ms. Cota. Again, just to refresh the board, we did a full presentation on this 2 meetings ago for the Board of County Commissioners and went through a full explanation with our consultant of the process that we've gone through in developing these criteria for the board's consideration, and how then those criteria were applied in our analysis of which delivery method to utilize. The board at that time had some questions about the project, particularly about how the water will be used from this project. We discussed that at some length in our workshop with the board on January 17th. Commissioners asked that we come back tonight also and just provide a little bit more for the public, just what the water flow looks like from the Yadkin project. As was mentioned earlier, and I hope this is up on your screens. There it is. It's up on this screen. In terms of who does this project serve and what's the benefit that will come from this project. So this first slide is showing our existing water distribution system throughout Union County, and that's the blue lines in here. And these are the major water lines that we have throughout the county. What's shown in purple is additional water project that it is on design right now. The area shaded in the middle is that portion of the county that is currently served by water that comes from our Catawba Water Treatment Plant and is within the Yadkin River Basin. The dotted line that runs, and unfortunately this cursor doesn't show up on that map up there, but the dotted line that runs north-south throughout the county towards the western side of the county is the divide between the Yadkin Basin and the Catawba Basin, the Catawba being on the left side, the Yadkin being on the right or eastern side. So right now, that whole center part of the county that is within the Yadkin Basin is served by water from Catawba, and there's limits as to how much we can provide in that area. All right, I am having some challenges here, Commissioner. That's better. So right now, our water flow in the system, most of our water comes from the Catawba Treatment Plant. It flows into our storage tanks on Sim Roads. From there, it is pumped up through a series of pump stations into elevated water tanks throughout the eastern and central part of Union County. And you can see where that water is flowing through by those arrows into that central part of the county. On the eastern part of the county, 20% of our water comes from the Anson County Water Treatment Plant, It goes to our pump station there on the county line, is pumped to a water storage tank, flows from there to another pump station on North Olive Branch Road, flows by gravity into the south part of the county on the east, and then on Olive Branch is pumped further north through those blue lines to serve the northeastern part of Union County. So that's our current system of water distribution right now. When the new Yadkin Regional Water Supply Project comes online, that will bring water from Lake Tillery, from the Yadkin intake there on the Yadkin River, through that dotted gold line to a new water treatment plant located in the northeast part of the county. And that dark blue line that you see on that map is the finished water transmission main that will connect the treatment plant to all of those existing water lines that are shown in light blue. So when the treatment plant is built, that pipeline will be built. It'll connect up to those water lines to allow the water from that treatment plant to then serve that whole eastern part of the county. In the future, we'll have to build another water transmission line to bring more water down into the Marshville, Wingate area and further south because the existing pipelines will be out of capacity in probably about 10 years after that plant goes online. So the flow is the water will come into the water plant through that raw water transmission main, be treated there, and then distributed out essentially in three directions, south through the existing main and then that new main, through that new water main that will be built as part of the project, and from that new water main further north into the rest of the eastern part of the county. And the board will note that that area in the north central part of the county, that leftmost arrow, tan arrow, that area was all served by Catawba water. And that's really a big driver in this project, is to get areas served with water from the Catawba treatment plant to be served by the Yadkin supply. Because the state legislation limits the amount of water we can take across that boundary, and we're right at that level right now. So we need to bring in a new Yadkin supply to meet the needs of our residents in Yadkin, in the Yadkin Basin. And you can see that's what this project does. It brings water in from the Yadkin River. Will meet our needs throughout the entire eastern part of the county. The western part of the county will still be served by the Catawba River Water Treatment Plant, only now it will stay mostly within that Catawba boundary, still a little bit carrying over into the early years. But the new project, again, as designed, will serve our Yadkin customers with Yadkin water. And that's all I have for that explanation. Commissioner, I have to answer any questions. Again, the motion before you tonight, that was really a two-part motion to, one, accept the criteria that is in your package for evaluating alternative project delivery, and then to accept the staff recommendation to use the design-build method of delivery based upon our meeting those criteria established in the agenda package.
And those that you covered at the January 2nd meeting?
Yes.
Mr. Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ed, thank you for spending time with me the other day, and Commissioner Helms. We both had concerns on this originally and asked that it be delayed for a while. So with that, again, thank you for the motion tonight, and that we're actually going to look and see what we can do. I would like to make the motion that we establish these criteria for determining the circumstances under which the design-build method is appropriate for the Yadkin River water
Supply project.
Supply project. I want to say water sewer plant, but that's not it. Water treatment plant and the finished water transmission main project, and authorize the use of the design-build project delivery method for the project.
We have a motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you, sir. We have done item 28, so we go to 29. Amended funding for the GO bond projects requested by the Board of Education.
Yes, and the background on this, as the board will recall, on November 20th, you had a joint work session with the Board of Education and its staff in which a revised project funding plan was presented to you. They have made a request, which is why this item is on our agenda. to amend the budget. In our budget that was adopted for fiscal year 2018, it actually, by those schools, identified the project funding as was contained within your original presentation prior to the referendum, and they're wanting to amend that budget to coincide with those numbers that were discussed with you on November 20th. And I know we have a board member and a staff member here from the Board of Education to answer any questions I'm sure that you may have.
Okay. Would you folks like to come forward and make some comments?
I don't really have any comments, but we went through it at the November 20th meeting, so if anybody has any questions, we just thought it might be a good idea to go ahead and approve the revised budget before we went down the road too far, got the bids, and then came back to you with the bids, because this is the road we intend to go down. So we thought we'd come back to you and see what you thought of it first.
Okay. Questions for Signed? Commissioner Rushing?
Just to comment mainly, back when we voted for the bonds, I had a lot of concerns about the projects and what would happen, because we didn't have a lot of the information and planning that's what I was concerned. I knew we'd need the money, and we all understood the need for the money. I just want to thank you and the other members of the Board of Education for doing exactly what I hoped that you would do, and that was to look at these projects, to look at the numbers, study them carefully, and come back with recommendations on how to use this money the most efficiently. And I think that's exactly what you've done, so I commend you for doing that.
I appreciate that. Originally, we used a December 15 forecast, and anything that's in yellow and red, we decided that those needed additions to because they were over capacity. So that's how we chose them, but fast forward to July of 2017, and our enrollment forecast looks vastly different.
Other questions? No? You need a motion? Sure, feel free.
Motion to approve the amended project funding for the 2016 general obligation bond projects as requested by the Board of Education and adopt the associated CPO.
Okay, motion. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. That will take us to item 29A.
Which is CZ 2017-009 PUD amendment for Ray Road townhouses.
I have the resolution authorizing condemnation.
Oh, I am so sorry, sir.
It's no problem.
Pardon
And
me.
I would ask for direction to how to Jeff to share this information off the motion. What? Okay. I will then offer that motion to adopt a resolution authoring condemnation to acquire certain property for water plant facility. That's sufficient? Okay. Motion, discussion.
I'd just like to make a comment. This is a difficult decision, but I think we have done everything we can to try and work in good faith, and we just kind of reached this point.
Okay, we have a motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. Now, 29B, Ray Road Townhomes and flood amendment.
Yes, sir, you had a presentation from staff on this rezoning. If you have any further questions for Mr. Matthews, otherwise the board can take appropriate action.
No further comments? Anybody want to ask Brian any further questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Make a point, please. Because the board has added these to the agenda tonight, these are, I believe, are the first two zoning petitions you've had since that were originated after October 1st. That date's significant because the consistency statement statute changed at that point. We need to show not only approval or disapproval, but also whether it's consistent or not consistent with the plan, the comprehensive plan. Mr. Matthews informs me that both of these petitions that you'll consider tonight are consistent with the plan. So if the board desires to approve them, the applicable consistency statement would be approval with approval of the statement that's consistent with the comprehensive plan. I'm sorry I had to explain that to you, but that's a little bit of a twist that we have to do going forward.
Fully understand. Appreciate it.
A motion be made to do both those at the same time.
The first petition, I believe, has two components. One is the conditional rezoning piece, and the other is the PUD amendment, so I suggest you do them separately.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
We do not have a,
No, we added them on tonight, so your motion for the first, the board desires to approve would be to approve the conditional rezoning and to, Brian, help me with this, to amend the PUD as described.
Yes, sir, it would be,
Yeah.
to amend the PUD would be one item.
Right, there's two items, but we have to do each rezoning separately.
That is correct. But the first one is not actually a rezoning. So like for the railroad project, there's one rezoning and one PUD amendment. So it's not two rezonings. It's technically one PUD amendment, one rezoning.
It's just before you vote on both of those at the same time.
Both projects at the same time, or you mean? I'm sorry. So yes, I believe that they could make that in one motion. That is my opinion.
Motion to approve the rezoning and amendment to the PUD. And anything else with that?
Okay, we have a motion. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. And we need to adopt the amendment consistent with the, adopt the consistency statement showing consistency with the comprehensive plan. That is a motion. Any discussion on that motion? We clear on that, Lynn? Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none.
The next item is the PUD amendment for the Marvin Town Center. This is a PUD amendment, and I would assume the consistency statement has to have the same terminology, Mr. Crook? Okay.
Okay. That would be a motion to modify the PUD on the Marvin Town Center and to approve the amendment consistent with the comprehensive plan. Sufficient?
To approve the consistency statement.
To approve the consistency statement. I'm sure Lynn has it in her notes, correct? Any question from the board? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. Thank you very much. And I believe
The next item is appointment to boards and committees. There are two appointments. One is to the Union County Board of Equalization and Review, and the other is to the Library Board of Trustees.
I will offer up Mr. Rape for reappointment to the Union County Board of Equalization and Review. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none.
And I'll make a motion that Terry Settle is approved for the Library Board of Trustees for an at-large representative.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. That takes us to Ms. Coto's comments.
And I have none this evening.
Okay. Commissioner Helms.
No comments.
Mr. Lance Simpson.
And no comments.
Mr. Rushing.
No comments.
Well, I'll look bad if I make some, I guess, but I would just like to offer my thanks to Mr. George, representing Indian Trail Baptist Church. That's an extremely large congregation of folks up there, and they do a great job throughout the community. And I don't want to talk too much, but in '96, I was a county extension director here in Union County and was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, lymphoma, and had to go undergo about 10 months of chemotherapy on a very regular basis. And there were a number of church congregations out there that I know personally prayed for me daily, and that meant a lot to me, both from a spiritual standpoint and from a physical and emotional standpoint. So I believe in the power of prayer, and I believe in every one of those names that are written in these Bibles, that they're sincere and that they do think about our jobs and our responsibilities and are there to support us. So I'd just like to thank Mr. George and his faith community there at Indian Trail Baptist Church. And having said that, I'll make a motion to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye. Have a good evening.